I'm Rita Kakati-Shah. I'm your host for the Uma Show. Welcome to your one-stop journey for feeling empowered. We're a platform for change. We build confidence. We are your voice. We want you to be bold, be you, be Uma. Today, we're exploring empowering women in business and society. And I'm so excited to be joined by a goddess of go-getting, Mona Sinha, who is co-founder of Raising Change and founder of the Asian Women's Leadership University. Welcome, Mona. It's so great to see you.
Thank you, Rita. It's lovely to be here.
You're from Calcutta originally, moved to the States in the 80s. Tell us about your upbringing and where your advocacy for gender equality started.
Well, I grew up in Calcutta. I was fortunate enough to be greatly influenced by none other than Mother Teresa, who I worked with as a volunteer from when I was quite young. And I grew up as a youngest of three girls. I think the concept of gender discrepancy showed up very early in my life. First of all, my parents were constantly asked, if they didn't have a boy, it was so sad that they had three girls, so I saw that and I felt it as being the youngest child and clearly having not been the boy that was expected, but there was nothing I could do about that. Yeah. And also at Mother Teresa's orphanage, I often wondered why there were so many girls till the realization hit that the boys were the ones getting adopted first. Wow. So I think that, in my unconscious has really settled into the work that I do today, which is really lifting up women and supporting girls and women as the agents of change.
Absolutely. And what a powerful scene that must have been for you, and realization, I guess, in terms of what changes actually needed in the world. That's amazing. You actually began your career in finance, didn't you? And you were at Morgan Stanley for many years. And you've also worked in marketing at Unilever, in restructuring at Elizabeth Arden, and have always been passionate about women's leadership and social justice. In fact, you have been described as having a muscle for finance and a passion for justice. Tell us more about your career path and the work you were doing.
Well, like you said, I started out on Wall Street in the 80s. I actually graduated from college in 1988. I came to this country in 85. And, especially in those days, it was a very male-dominated world. And very few women, who chose to go down that career path. So there were always instances where I'd say most of the time one had to, do the extra to prove oneself, to show that you were as good as everybody else. And what I discovered there was that I didn't really have to play a role. I had to just be authentically myself because I trusted that I was smart. I went to women's college, which was so empowering just to see wonderful role models all around me. And that saw me through it, really. And the fact that I was good at my work and I loved what I did pushed me into doing well. And the same philosophy held true at Arden, at Unilever, where I was handling really huge projects. And I was confident enough to step into them and do them to the best of my ability.
Oh, I love that. And actually really well said, because sometimes you do feel like you are the only person there or you're the only woman, but it's up to you to think, okay, well, I'm going to put my head down, going to do the work best of my ability and let that shine through and just power forward. So I love the fact that you shared that.
And there were times when people would be requesting me to work on their deals, not because I was a woman or because I was not a guy or whatever, but because I was the best person to do the job.
Exactly. And that's ultimately what drove you forward. Yeah. So I love that that feel for that and your experience there. You're doing a lot of work to address the funding gap for mission-driven organizations and women in leadership. You also serve on the board of several nonprofits as well as academic institutions that ultimately advance society. And I remember in a past conversation that we actually had that you mentioned that the corporate world actually has a lot to learn from the nonprofit world. Can you share a little bit about how so?
Yeah, for sure. So I pivoted into leadership in the nonprofit world about 20 years ago, which seems unbelievable how fast it's gone by. And it was really because I was sitting on a human rights board all those years ago. And I would find that any little strategy that I shared, which to me was so basic, in terms of building an organization, would be met with oohs and ahs and, oh my God, that was the most brilliant thing you said. Well, to me, it wasn't so brilliant. It was common sense. And I made that shift thinking, where could I really have impact in my life? And I felt that I could have the most impact bringing those frameworks and those structures to nonprofits that were doing very important mission driven work, but in many instances did not have those financial or corporate tools that could help them be sustainable. Things like governance and financial stability and things like that.
Yeah.
What I've learned over the past 20 years, and which has really been fortified by the CEO roundtable last year, when the CEOs issued a joint statement saying that
Mhm.
the work of a corporation is not just for its shareholders, but for stakeholders, which are
Right.
multidimensional and incorporate, customers and employees and communities in which they serve. It really made me think about how the two are linked. They're not ranked. Most people think of corporates as holding a higher position in society than somehow nonprofits. But the nonprofits are the ones who are challenging and often solving the most intractable societal problems, which allow for corporates to function or their products and services to function in the communities that they're in. I think what perhaps corporate world can learn from nonprofits is really the focus on mission and the
Mm.
drive of really sticking to that mission. And there's a term in the nonprofit world called mission creep,
Yep.
which means you walk away from your mission. And it's very important for a corporation to realize what its mission is in the context of stakeholders. Because now they've put this statement out there. How are they going to actually act upon it? And we're seeing it now more than ever with this pandemic, because we see that the office is no longer a place for people to go and gather. And work has to be done in the context of everybody's lived experience. So whether it's an employee who has to take care of her children that are schooling virtually, or a
Yeah.
spouse who's at home, or deal with a sick relative, that's reality, right? And you can't ignore that from the workspace or the corporate space anymore. So everything's become very intertwined.
Yeah.
And I think the key lessons from the nonprofit world is definitely focus on mission, a
Yeah.
focus on community, and the connections that nonprofit worlds create, between the people who are on the ground actually doing the work, um,
Mm.
funders, ecosystems. It's a whole circular economy that you cannot ignore when you're doing this work,
Mm.
because the focus usually is in solving a problem.
Yeah.
And the corporate world, puts out products and services, and it's always a consumer need that they're looking at. But I think that need has now become broader. And in this
Mm.
time, we see it more than ever before.
No, absolutely. And I think that's really well said. The fact that you do have to focus on that mission, community is at the core of all of this. What are you doing and for whom in the first place? And that passion that drives it, I think that is so, so important about, who are the lives that we're actually touching? What are we doing this for in the first place? So that's really well said. In terms of financial independence, that is something that you are a strong advocate for. As part of Columbia Business School's board, an initiative that you have been working on is actually sending students to prisons to learn about financial independence. Talk to us about that.
It's a wonderful program. The Tema Center at Columbia Business School focuses specifically on social enterprise. And it's quite a unique sub-school, I like to call it, within the Columbia Business School, because it does exactly what we were speaking about just now. It teaches business leaders about ecosystems and about stakeholders, not just shareholders. So this program, which is called REAP, the Reentry Acceleration Program, and what it does is it takes a group of Columbia Business School finance students to prisons to teach prisoners about financial inclusivity and managing finance, and what does it mean? How do you invest money when you make money? How do you earn money? All of this.
Yeah.
And it's a two-way street, because obviously the people who are incarcerated that are due to be released soon now have some tool in their toolkit that they can use to further their own lives. But an important thing happens to the students. They realize that everybody who's in prison is not necessarily a bad guy. Circumstances often put you in situations that you sometimes have no control over. And these future leaders and these future corporate CEOs are seeing a very different part of community. And they're seeing that people who've been incarcerated don't have to be marked for life for
Right.
something that landed them in prison, and that they can come out of prison and have whole lives and can contribute to society and build their own economic power. And they're much more likely to hire people like that because they've been through this program. So it works
Yeah,
both ways.
that's powerful, really, really powerful tool, because to your point, you're saying these are the future leaders, whether in corporations or the nonprofit world, whatever it may be, but you're bringing that social justice and that feeling into it to think through that lens now, understand what's happening later on. So that's so powerful. That is
Relationships with people, right? So
yeah.
it's fine to be taught the stuff, but when you actually interact with a human being, and you could even perhaps mentor a human being who's in this situation, perhaps circumstantially, perhaps they really didn't do anything wrong, but we're in the wrong place at the wrong time. We know that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say it's a great lesson actually in unconscious bias as well, because that's something that we all have, and this is the perfect example to actually put yourself in somebody else's shoes, have that relationship that you just mentioned with somebody else, to actually hear a different perspective, one that completely just blows our mind sometimes, because we are often not brought up in those circumstances and situations, and seeing something different is really powerful. So I love that. Now tell us a little bit about your work as the executive producer of Disclosure, the documentary film on the representation of trans people, which premiered at the Sundance in January 2020 and was released on Netflix during Pride Month this past June.
Oh, that's been such a joy in my life. This is the first film I've ever produced. I haven't done anything like this before. My work has all been in social justice, financial inclusion, things like that. I happened to meet the director and the producer at an event at which they were talking about their film. And what really piqued my interest was they were talking about how their cast and their crew were 95% transgender people.
Wow.
And they hired a crew, and you can imagine it was very difficult to find a trans person to fill every single role in a film. There's so many different roles, right? And where they couldn't find someone, they actually trained someone. And that was just eye-opening to me. I was like, wow, you talk the talk about inclusion, this is walking the walk. And it's giving people a new lease on life post-production, because so many, and we've seen this, so many of the crew that worked on Disclosure have actually gone on to work on other projects and films and, create a livelihood for themselves. The story behind Disclosure, I encourage everyone to watch it, is so powerful because it talks about how we form our own opinions as human beings. So 80% of Americans have never actually met or known a trans person. And that's probably not a surprising fact. So their thoughts and their ideas about a transgender person has come from the media. Disclosure goes back 100 years and looks at how trans representation in the media has been so damaging and has been so harmful to this community.
Yeah.
And it really makes you think, because there are clips in that movie that you and I have seen, and we've had reactions that today we'd be feeling pretty darn ashamed of. So it's worth seeing it. And I think since 2014, and since Laverne Cox has become a big star, since her role in Orange is the New Black, and some other trans people have become quite well known, it's had a backlash. The community has faced a big backlash. And people may not know this, but the murder of Black trans women is described by the American Medical Association as an epidemic in our country.
Really? Wow.
So it's really important to understand the historical context of where transphobia comes from. And at the end of the day, you watch this film and you hear real people speak. And as Laverne Cox says, it's like we don't exist, but we do. And we've always been here. And that's powerful, because we've had, oh my God, we've had so many emails and so much, fantastic response to this film, with people saying, I just didn't know. And now we're taking it into an impact platform where we're going to develop these toolkits for schools, educational institutions, the media and entertainment, which is the number one place that needs to change. And also in corporate settings for, updating, shall we say, the whole DEI platform to be more inclusive.
Yeah, that is so powerful and so important, you know. So really, really kudos for doing that work. You and the entire team for doing that. So I think everyone who hasn't checked out the movie, absolutely go ahead and do that. Now, pivoting a little bit, you are a senior woman across multiple fields. Were there any challenges you faced while climbing up the ladder? And if so, and I can imagine there must have been some, how did you deal with them?
Well, I climbed up the ladder to a certain point, right? And then I stepped off the ladder. I decided to create my own ladder. So that's how I dealt with it in some ways, because I'm a free agent. I don't report to anybody but myself. Sometimes it's the hardest person to report to. Yes, of course, there were challenges. Of course, there were preconceived notions. And frankly, even now, you get judged for how you speak, you get judged for what you look like, you get judged for the color of your skin, right? Everything. You have to have a pretty strong belief in yourself. I truly believe in the work I do, and that centers me. Meeting people like Amy and Sam who made disclosure centers me because it makes me realize that these are powerful storytellers who don't have access to the places they need to be. And if I can provide that access, why shouldn't I?
Yeah.
So it's that philosophy of coming from a place of abundance. I feel very blessed to be in a position I'm in. And I don't want for anything. I don't have to have everything in my life. But what I have, I'm very able and willing and happy to share.
Yeah. That's really well said, because I think when you come to the realization that you don't need everything, that's when you can actually start living your life and stop striving constantly and going up that uphill battle. Really, really powerful, that is. Tell us a little bit about what I told my daughter, Lessons from Leaders on Raising the Next Generation of Empowered Women, a book that you contributed in.
That was so long ago. Actually, it was very funny because I have twin daughters. They just turned 19. And they said to me, they said, Mom, you never gave us that book. And I said, I didn't. I actually hadn't, because when I wrote it, quite young, and they wouldn't have really, understood what I was saying. I talk it's written as a letter to my two daughters, Anya and Ria. And I talk there about some of my background and how I grew up and the lessons I learned, and the valuable lessons of just being on a path of discovery, being curious, and really trying to understand who you authentically are. You don't have to be the most popular person in the room. You don't have to be the most beautiful person in the room. You don't have to be the wealthiest person in the room. You have to learn to discover who you really are and what you can do in the world that will make a difference. That was a fun project, and I was really thrilled by all the people who wrote letters, and they were all so different. Every article was so different, and some were quite brutal in their honesty, frankly. But that's what women do, right? Women step into these very vulnerable places, especially when it comes to talking to their children.
Yeah.
So I hope the lessons will land.
Yeah, and actually, that, to your point, that is what sticks. When somebody hears somebody's personal stories, that's what you bond with. So I think it's, absolutely fine. And what more and more people are doing now, sort of just being themselves more and sort of exposing these things that traditionally people didn't. And I think that's the power in this. You have received multiple awards and recognitions for the incredible work you are doing. To name a few, the Ellis Island Medal of Honor, the Last Girl Champion Award by Gloria Steinem, Exemplary Leadership in Development from Smith College, the Lifetime Inspiration Award from Breakthrough, and upcoming next April, Columbia's Business School will actually recognize you with a Horton Award for Excellence in Social Enterprise. I mean, congratulations. What is next on the horizon for you?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't look for awards or recognition. Just keep doing what I'm doing. I think this moment is so pivotal, and it's exposed so much during this pandemic. We have just seen how women have suffered disproportionately. Our frontline workers have been women. How, especially Black women have suffered with lack of access to medical care If you look at, education, you see how, families where there's one computer
Yeah.
and a single mother, and she has to work, and her 3 children have to go to school. So who gets the computer?
Right.
There are all these issues. And so I've been leading 2 organizations right now, and I'm, absolutely knee deep in them. One is called Women Moving Millions, and we actually resource social change. So it's a group of about 350 amazing change makers that commit to $1 million minimum to advance women and girls. And we just launched a campaign for $100 million because these resources are very needed right now. And I'll be happy to report we're already at 82 million.
Amazing.
I also lead another organization which is part of the Equal Rights Amendment, and it's the Fund for Women's Equality. And we have to get this amendment codified in our constitution. I mean, given the state of affairs in this country, we need equal rights in our constitution. I mean, America is the only institutional country which does not have equal rights in its constitution. There are only 28 in the world, and we by far are the biggest and the most prominent. And it is unacceptable, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to do that. We're close. We have 38 states who've ratified the amendment, which is a requirement. We have an artificial time limit that had been removed in the House and is due to come up in the Senate for a vote. If it came on today, we would get it. But, Mitch McConnell will not allow it to come on the Senate floor. So we got to fight it. This is the fight of our lives. This election coming up in a few weeks is literally the fight of our lives.
Yeah.
So we have to get equal rights in our constitution. There is just no way around that. And we have to resource those change makers and women on the ground who are really doing the hard work of creating a gender equal world. So those are my 2 big priorities right now. But other than that, I do have other board commitments and personal mentor commitments that I am engaged in.
I love that. Very, very meaningful work. And, I guess just keep on. It's a lifelong battle, lifelong aim to try and strive for this. And that's all we can do, I guess, just keep on at it. So fingers crossed for that. You also, as you mentioned, you have twin daughters who are in college, who I'm sure they must be so, so incredibly proud of you and everything that you've achieved. What's been your parenting philosophy in raising the next generation?
Well, I have a son who's 21 and who's a senior in college, and he calls himself a feminist. I think that's one win right there. And the girls have taken a gap year because this year is really not a normal year for them to go to college. And they are independent. They've moved out of home and rented their own apartment, and they're both working. And my parenting philosophy is really, these are not kids anymore. They are young adults, and one must learn to respect and listen to them as young adults. And, I love this piece by Khalil Gibran. If you haven't read it, you should read it, about children and about how children are not our children. They're just ours to hold and treasure for the time that we have. And we have to learn to set them free. And all we can do is lead by example, instill some strong core values, and trust that they're going to be wonderful human beings. So that's my blessing for my children.
I love that. Amazing. Before we let you go, what advice would you give to any young girls watching today, looking to make the most of the futures?
There's so much advice that one gives and one hears, and so little of it actually sticks, right? I think the one thing I would tell young women today is just be your authentic self. With the rise of social media and all of this quote unquote aspirational stuff out there, it often makes young people feel on edge or feel unauthentic or try to be something that doesn't really resonate within them. And I think when you're in that place, you can never really rise to your full capacity and ability. Do what you do from a place of love. That's very important. If you don't come to your work from a place of abundance and a place of love, it's never going to fulfill you. And it's never going to let you go to the next level that you're capable of, right? And similarly, step into those feminine traits that we all have within us. If you look at who has succeeded during this pandemic, a lot of countries with female leaders have actually done a lot better than everyone else. And it's because they led authentically. It didn't mean they were weak, not at all. They were just as strong as anyone else, but they exhibited signs of empathy, tremendous empathy, tremendous collaboration and care. And these are things that we know how to do well. And I think we need to step into those places and own them instead of hiding them. And the last thing I'd say is I learned very early on in my career to bring all of myself to the forefront. So just because I was a banker didn't mean I had to be really serious and wear button-down suits and be this, banker lookalike. I could still be, the person who loves art. I could still be the person who travels all over the world. I could still be the person who loves eating and food from everywhere. And these conversations make you real. I think trying to fit into a mold makes you try and be something that you really are not. So at the fundamental level, you really have to be authentically who you are. And once that shines through, the rest is an open book.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing those such powerful words and, sharing an incredible journey with us today. Mona Sinha, co-founder of Raising Change and founder of the Asian Women's Leadership University. And thank you to our viewers for joining us on this empowerment journey today. We want you all to embrace that inner goddess of go-getting. We want you to be bold, be you, be Uma.